Hey guys, and welcome back to Z3 Cubing. Today we're going to be comparing the original GuHong V1 from 2010 with the brand new GuHong V4 M from 2020. DaYan is a speedcube company that made history back in 2010 with the release of the original DaYan GuHong. It's the predecessor of practically all modern speedcubes with its smooth and fast turning combined with great corner cutting, especially in reverse, which was very revolutionary at the time. Now this GuHong version 1 was actually my very first 3x3 speedcube when I started this channel back in 2014. Over the next few years they released a number of other popular 3x3s, including the DaYan GuHong, which I also used extensively, and the GuHong version 2, which made a number of improvements over the V1. But over the second half of the decade, DaYan's dominance began to fade. They spent 5 years without releasing a 3x3, followed by a number of mediocre ones. Last year's DaYan was a step in the right direction, with more modern performance and features like magnets, but they still haven't seen widespread adoption since the GuHong. But now the year is 2020, and DaYan has actually decided to bring back the cube that made them famous, the GuHong, with the V3 M and soon after the V4 M, which we're going to be taking a look at today, courtesy of thecubicle.com. Use discount code Z3Cubing for 5% off anything from their store. Well, needless to say, I think we've come a long way since 2010. Right off the bat, I'd say this cube's performance is definitely on par with a lot of modern speed cubes. It stands out as being incredibly smooth, very light, and also very quiet as it turns, plenty fast, and decently stable. The V1, on the other hand, just feels slow in comparison. The turning feels very bumpy and the cube just feels blocky, maybe even a little bit less stable due to the lack of magnets. Of course, any cube company nowadays can make a 3x3 better than the original GuHong, but I think the V4M just might be a worthy successor to this legendary cube. Now before we get too far into the turning, let's get some basic details out of the way. The V1 first retailed for $12, whereas the V4 comes in at $15, which is frankly about the same if you adjust for inflation. This cube comes in both black and stickerless, which is the same as the original minus the option for white, but who likes white cubes anyway? The stickered and stickerless shades have definitely been updated to a more modern bright color scheme. I don't think they exactly match any other brand, but they do look pretty nice compared to this. The cube has shrunk from the old standard 57mm to the new more typical 56mm. The cube has also gone from a weight of 86 grams down to a staggering 65, and keep in mind that they added magnets along the way, making this one of the lightest speed cubes on the market. And after my first impressions on this cube, I think that its lightweight might actually be the biggest thing going for it compared to the other options in 2020. One of, if not the best speed cubes on the market right now, is the GuHong V1 Pro, which is known for coming in at an impressive 63 grams. This cube is in an entirely different price bracket, retailing at $65, but part of the reason that it turns so well is due to its very light weight. The less the pieces weigh, the less force it takes to turn the sides, and thus the faster the cube feels. And that's definitely true too for the GuHong V4. In fact, at just $15, this has got to be the lightest magnetic speed cube you can actually buy for a reasonable price. So if you're a big fan of that light and fast feeling you get with GAN puzzles, yet can't afford their ever increasing prices, I think I might actually recommend checking this cube out. The performance is actually pretty close to the 11M Pro, trading a bit of the airiness for ultra smoothness, and maybe a bit of fluidity for some snappiness. The magnets are a little bit stronger than average. Speaking of performance, let's get back to the original comparison. Another thing the GuHong V1 was known for was its corner cutting, so let's check that out. I think it can do just under 45 degrees forwards corner cutting without a lot of effort, and it can do maybe about 2/3 reverse, which is actually pretty impressive considering its very blocky design. The V4M, on the other hand, let's try and do over 45. And there we go, that was easy. Can it go even further? Oh wow, that's incredible. It's actually easy to go that far. That's like among the best on the market. How about reverse? Yeah, easily almost a QB. How about that far? Not quite, but yeah, that's actually really good. Now, one of the biggest issues with the original GuHong was the popping. Not really something you have to worry about today, but I definitely struggled with it for the first few months of owning this cube. Now, the easiest way to tell if a GuHong is a V1 and not a V2 is that when you pop out an edge piece, it doesn't have these torpedoes installed. Now, this little green piece here is called a torpedo, and its purpose is to prevent popping. Basically, it fits right underneath the base of the adjacent corner pieces to prevent the edge from coming out. The reason my V1 has torpedoes is that I actually added them myself. You can see if you open up an edge that it's actually a totally separate, removable piece. I believe these were first introduced on the DaYan Zanchi, then eventually added to the GuHong on the V2. Another company called Rubiks actually sold these torpedoes that you could install inside of your V1, and I actually bought 2 sets so you can see the other unopened one right here. In contrast, on the GuHong V4, the torpedoes are just built into the plastic on each half of the edge, just like on most other modern speed cubes. They're shaped a little bit more efficiently, but you can definitely see the resemblance between the two puzzles. Now while we're here, let's also pop out a corner and just see how all the pieces compare. And man, there is a lot of lube on these pieces, it's kind of gross. But actually, the more I look at the mechanism, the less it reminds me of the original GuHong. In fact, it actually looks a lot more like a modern speed cube than I thought it would. So let's go ahead and do a comparison with the pieces of the GaN 11M Pro. So let's open this up. And as you can see, the pieces look very similar to those on the GuHong V4. Definitely not exactly the same, but a very striking resemblance nonetheless. But you do have to keep in mind though that DaYan was the one who started most of these trends in modern speed cubes, like all the curved edges for better corner cutting, and of course torpedoes. Now one thing that hasn't really changed between the GuHongs is the core. If we go ahead and take a look underneath both the centerpieces, we can see that under both of them is just a simple screw. Unlike on most modern speed cubes nowadays where you have all sorts of fancy tensioning and elasticity adjustment systems, on the GuHong you still just have a screw and a spring. Now this isn't that huge of an issue because the tension still can be adjusted and the elasticity of these default springs I think is pretty good, but it still is a bit of a bummer that you can't change it. Now one last thing I think we should do to compare the turning of both cubes is a bit of a side-by-side solve comparison. It's not going to be anything scientific, but I'm just going to do a solve on each one as a demonstration of how the performance has improved. So what has changed in 10 years? Well, certainly a lot. What qualified as smooth and fast turning back in 2010 is now barely passable as a speed cube. If you slow down your turning to make up for the worst corner cutting and blockiness of it, you can kind of get away with a speed solve, but it's definitely going to be at least a little bit slower. Plus the bigger thing is that it's going to be a lot less comfortable to solve on. The GuHong V4 on the other hand feels great to turn. Its performance is up there with a lot of high-end modern speed cubes, and it still comes in at a pretty reasonable price of just $15. Now notice that those two times really weren't that different. It really just proves that your speed has a lot more to do with you and your turning than the actual cube that you're using. Of course, I'm going to have a lot more fun if I'm solving on a cube like this than on a cube like this, so just find a cube that you're comfortable with, that you enjoy solving on, and don't really worry as much about having the best cube on the market, because it really doesn't matter as much as you think. That being said, if you like really lightweight, fast cubes, and you also like the idea of it being very smooth, plus you're not looking to spend a lot, then this might actually be a really good choice for you. So if that is the case, be sure and check it out at thecubicle.com, link in the description. You really can't go wrong for just $15, plus you can get 5% off with discount code Z3Cubing. My other go-to budget pick, the Moyu RS3M 2020, is a little bit cheaper at just $9. It's a little bit heavier, which means it's going to be a little bit harder to turn, but it also feels a lot more solid and a lot more stable. It's really just a difference between two turning styles. You really can't go wrong with this one, so I'll put it in the description as well. Anyway, yeah, this was my unboxing and comparison of the DaYan GuHong V4 M with its older brother, the revolutionary GuHong V1 from over 10 years ago. I hope you all enjoyed and learned a little bit about the history of DaYan as well as about this brand new, pretty cool speed cube. But yeah, that's pretty much it, and I'll see you guys next time.